Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. I'd now like to welcome today's panelist, Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, and Mr. Jide Ologun, who is a legal practitioner and national development advocate. Gentlemen, Eid Mubarak. Happy Eid al-Fitr. I know both of you are not you are not Muslims, but we are all celebrating today. But we have had 3 guests so far. We had Professor Onyebuchi Chukwu. Professor Onyebuchi Chukwu was Minister of Health under the Jonathan administration, and he talked about a number of issues. The Humphrey Nwosu issue, whether it should be immortalized or not. Reps proposing to strip vice president, governors, and deputy governors of immunity under Section 308, and then changing their mind. And then also the plan to have elections on the same day. We also had Dr. Olayinka Jibono, who spoke about another major event today. It's World Bipolar Day. People are bipolar, she told us, have extreme mood swings. They could be depressed to the extreme. They could be happy to the extreme. And all of that about the stigma and the role of the community. And then, of course, we had Ambassador Akinsanya, who addressed 3 major issues. The U.S. pausing financial contributions to WTO under Trump, the devastating earthquake in Myanmar, Thailand, parts of India, parts of China, and then also the fact that in Niger, we have General Chiani, Abdurrahmani Chiani, making himself president, appointing himself a general, and saying he will be in charge of Niger for the next 5 years. Where do I start from? Let me start with you, Mr. Ologun.
Thank you very much. Let's start with the Niger issue. We are having it repeated again when some military leaders will metamorphose into civilian leadership with lots of promises for the citizens. But recently, we read about Niger running to Nigeria, despite snubbing Nigeria when the intervention first took place, for support. And I just hope that the continent of Africa will begin to have leaders who mean well for their citizens. And, and I believe what he's trying to do is just to get recognition, because globally speaking, the world has shifted away from military interventions. And don't forget also that Niger and 2 other countries have decided to jet out of the ECOWAS. But let's see how far it will go. Initially, the rumble with ECOWAS was the fact that he proposed 3 years to return to civilian rule. So I don't want to call this democracy. But let's see how well he will go with his people. And that brings us to Nigeria, talking about the move by the National Assembly to have election in 1 day. And I think we've been discussing this for some years now. It should not only scale down the cost. For instance, if you compare the budget in 1999, which was about 1.5 billion, to about 350 billion, though INEC said in 2023 that they only got about 313.4 billion naira for the election. You must be concerned, and the time involved also. And it wouldn't be a bad idea if we can have elections in 1 day. And one of the points being raised is that it will curb apathy. I don't know to what extent that will happen. If we still don't have good governance, that may not help on the side of apathy. And for the likes of Senator Shomole, he is of the argument that what about the ballot papers and how INEC will manage these 5 elections in 1 day. I think it's a possibility if we set our mind on it and other issues that are raised. And on the case of Humphrey Nwosu being immortalized, I think the challenge we have in the country is the challenge that has been expressed in communication. that people listen to react and not necessarily to understand. And I read deep into that report, and I think it's more of a matter of the way you are bringing the matter, the rule and order of the Senate, and that can still be taken into. But some we quickly jump out and say it has ethnic background. Whatever the case may be, Professor Humphrey Nwosu has done well by standing his ground on the path of righteousness. And then, like the commentator mentioned, you can see now that IBB, who was the main man behind annulling that election, has written a book now. And some of the victims and of the June 12th are now coming to donate money, about 17 billion, to the man. So Nigeria is still pursuing righteousness. And that takes us to Donald Trump, who is pursuing exclusive governments. And why I think he may not want to fund World Trade Organization is the fact that if you look at the WTO that was established in 1995, one of the intentions is to scale down tariffs, international trade, and break down barriers. And if you know Donald Trump very well, he's a tariff person. He has slammed Mexico, he's dealing with Canada and shaking China. And for him, he is saying that my interest is America, and let me see how I can save funds for my country. But we have also said that to what extent can he run with this seemingly antagonistic approach in the business environment. So we wish him the best. And again, the issue of death penalty came up. And globally speaking, I think right now there are just about 57 countries in the world that still practice capital punishment. And coming to Nigeria, even when people are sentenced to death, how many governors we signed? We still remember the case of Evans. Evans was given death sentence, I think as far back as 2020. He's still there. We still have the case of Reverend King. And in 2017, I had the privilege of reviewing the anti-kidnapping law of Lagos State under Governor Ambode that introduced capital punishment for any kidnapper that the victim dies in the process, and life imprisonment for those who demand ransom. And I pointed out that a kidnapper is not afraid of the death. So the concern of the government should be not to give them an operational base. And Doctor, that was when the Lagos State went as far as Ondo State dealing with Mighty. It was after then that Evans was discovered that you don't allow them to operate. These are criminals, and they are not afraid of your death sentence. I mean, we studied the issue of armed robbery in Nigeria. Death sentence had been in the 70s, but did this stop armed robbery? The point is no. However, we should find a way of reducing crime in our land. And finally, let me now bring that to the issue of thinking that removing immunity can help fight corruption. I totally disagree with that. You see, to start with, Nigeria is a place where we like to sue and things like that. That distraction may be there. And if we really want to fight corruption, Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999, as amended, says that the state shall abolish corrupt practice and abuse of office, and nothing forecloses investigating a governor when in office or deputy governor. What you do is warehouse your findings and you proceed against them when they are out of office. Because as soon as you step out of that office, you submit the immunity. And we have the case of Ayodele Fayose, who was investigated while in office. And as soon as he left office, he was the one that drove himself to EFCC. But how far has EFCC gone in prosecuting that matter? Because in the criminal justice ecosystem, you need thorough investigation, diligent prosecution, and a committed judiciary. So in the interim, let me submit and allow Professor Aworawo.
I've listened to you very carefully. Let's go to Professor Aworawo now.
Where I wanted to start is not where I will start now because of Barrister Jide Ologun's comments. I want to take it from where he stopped. That the concern of government should be how to prevent crime, not necessarily what punishment and all. I mean, that should be the main focus. Because when crime has been committed and people have suffered, the punishment to whoever has committed the crime, where is it will give some, satisfaction, but it will not revert the suffering that those who are victims of violence will have had. But I don't quite agree with him that, those who commit crime are not afraid of death. Many of them are afraid of death. Even Anini, when he was arrested, he was shivering. And
the Amnesty International
yes.
says, and that was his argument,
yes.
that look, the death penalty
yes. has
not been proven theoretically, research-wise, that it reduces the prevalence of crime.
Yes, I vehemently disagree with Amnesty International. One man cannot go and wipe out a family of 8 who has done nothing. And then you say, if they sentence him to death, you are talking about his rights. The 8 people who were wiped out, whose life was snuffed out, who cannot return to life, they are not entitled to life. I disagree vehemently with Amnesty International in that. My position is that this thing should be done carefully. Nobody should die when he has not committed the offense. But once the offense has been proven, beyond all reasonable doubt that the person committed it, I'm a strong advocate of death penalty.
Section 33 of the 1999 Constitution.
I've seen how people suffer from the hands of some idiots. Some idiots on the street just go and wipe out the family. And you now come and say, right? So those who die don't have rights. So it is not just a case of reducing crime. I agree with Amnesty International that, yes, it may not. But condign justice. Condign. C-O-N-D-I-G-N. Condign. I support it fully. You don't kill people and then somebody will say, oh, you have rights. Nobody must kill you. When you were killing, what were you thinking? Anyway, so that is that about that. And then I come to bipolarity. I'm not a medical person, but all I can say is that bipolar persons need help, and bipolar persons need understanding. Society should not stigmatize them. They should understand them. They should show empathy to them. That is the way all of us can, accommodate and ensure that those who are bipolar feel comfortable. The other details I'm not quite, familiar with, but I know that the social relations aspect, there's a lot that society can do to make those who are bipolar comfortable. Then elections in one day, that will be fine if the INEC is able to conduct it effectively. It will be fine. It may help in that party because people will now know that it's just one day. Let me just sacrifice today and then, discharge my civic responsibility. It may, we are not sure, but it will likely, help in that regard. It will save costs, not just the cost to INEC, but the cost to people. Because each time election is held, everywhere is shut down, the cost is incalculable. So there are so many advantages, to having elections in one day. But the other side to it is, how ready will INEC be? Even now that the elections are staggered, we have seen INEC not being able to meet up, and carry out the assignments as expected. In the past cycles of election, we have had, in the morning of election, we hear that the election has been postponed because INEC is not ready. Is it that INEC that will now conduct elections in one day? So if that will go, a whole lot will have to be done to assist INEC to be able to conduct elections in one day. But beyond elections, our attitude to governance, beyond elections are just to get people who will govern. But in Nigeria today, it seems that election has now become the main thing. Governance occupies the backyard. You look at what is happening in Rivers. Look at how much resources just for election that will come up in 2027. See what Tibo Kibas is doing. He's dismantling this, dismantling that. He hasn't asked the question, how is the health condition of Rivers people? How is education in this place? How many ICT centers can we put so that there can be innovation for youth? Nobody's asking those questions. Dismantle this, dismantle that, cancel this, cancel that, even looking for corruption charges. Oh, God. So beyond the election, governance, Nigerians need to get something far better than we are getting now in terms of governance. And I fear a bit of 2027. If so much resources is committed to a place like Rivers and some other places, attention is being paid so intensely, I think that the good fortune we had in 2015 might be reversed. The good fortune we had in 2015 was that the opposition did well. did very well, that made it a bit easier for the incumbent government to accept the result. You know, if the sitting government at that time had done very well and won that election, Nigeria would have been in trouble. The reverse may be the case in 2027, where if the opposition does very well and maybe wins the election, we may be in trouble from what you are saying. Anyway, we hope that does not happen. But for those of us who can see from the analysis of what we have on ground, it makes sense for us to be talking now, so that we prepare our minds and get those who might want to make the place ungovernable not succeed. So election fine, but governance, the other thing. Then we move to Myanmar earthquake. We sympathize with those people. That area has been, prone to earthquakes, seismic activities and all. You recall that one in 2024, Boxing Day, 2004 rather, Boxing Day, where about over 230,000 people died. A tsunami accompanied it. Yeah. So that area is the same Thailand, the same Myanmar, that same axis.
It's on the fault line.
Yes.
It's like gang fault line.
Yes. I don't think there's anything anybody can do other than just to prepare better and then response also to be more effective. But here back home, I agree with Ambassador Kakinson that there are a few things you can do. For instance, people have been talking about the boreholes, too many boreholes all over the place, and the chances that this might, lead to earthquakes at some point in the future. We need to study that more carefully and see whether there is that claim is actually true. And if it is true, we need to, begin to work to see how, our water system can be centralized. And that takes me to Trump. These days I laugh at Americans. I laugh at them. America having this kind of president? Who does not believe in multilateralism? Now, this tariffs is imposing. Americans should go and study it. Has it improved the American economy? Myself and one of my students, Susan is saying, who is now in Princeton, did a study in his forthcoming. And we discovered that America was as worse off in the tariffs imposed on China as China itself. Americans, they need to go and study that. The data does not show that or confirm that these tariffs benefit even the US. So this America first, I just laugh.
American exceptional.
Well, it doesn't, I can't see it. I mean, if it is benefiting America, extensively, and then maybe others are not benefiting, well, we can say, well, he's doing well. But the data does not show that even America itself is benefiting from the tariffs. And, unfortunately, America is the world's biggest power. What it does affects everybody else. I agree with Ambassador Akinson that others should develop themselves. This idea of waiting for one superpower, once it does something, it affects everybody. For instance, even for us, the Adion Waterworks, the US was among those, you say it was among those funding it, the expansion. Now with the withdrawal of resources, that will likely be affected. So what America does affects people, diversely, in different ways. And which is why America having this kind of president is not good for the US itself, it's also not good for the world. Then finally, the Niger leader, who has then now turned himself to a civilian wants to be as president, a 5-year transition. This is consistent with military rule in Africa. They usually don't want to leave office. Babangida was one of them. He didn't mention, I've read that book, he didn't quite say it, but you see that he didn't want to leave. We all know. There's a book edited by Transition Without End, where transition, just to keep himself in office. This behavior of the Nigerian is consistent with it. Even when ECOWAS imposed sanctions on Mali a few years ago, it was also get them to shorten the transition period. But they are swiftly held to power. So it's in line with that, but let's hope that something will happen. It can only be internal at this point. If the people within the country begin to see the negative impact and then protest, maybe that will help. But we hope that they will come back to ECOWAS. They will come back to ECOWAS at some point, but I don't think it will be in the immediate.
Okay, yeah. I see that both you and Mr. Ologun, you've covered the grounds mostly. But maybe I missed out your opinion on Professor Humphrey Nwosu.
Good. Let me just make a couple of comments about that. I'm really surprised at Comrade Moshomule and Senator Lamilekan Deola Yayi. I'm surprised at their position on this matter. They said the man, if he was not courageous, if he had courage, he would have announced all the results.
No, Nigerians think you have to die to be a hero.
No, you see, the much we know was because the man was courageous. If the man were like any of them, we wouldn't know who won that result, that election. He would just go collect some money from Babangida and go his way. He resisted the military. Even Babangida, the military, they called him and tried to force him. He refused. He continued announcing. The much we know was because he dared the military as at that time. And somebody is saying that if he had courage, he should have. They were not children now. They are older than me. I mean, these guys. We are about age mates. So if I know as much, I expect Oshomole and Adeola Yayi to also know as much. We were all part of the process. We all knew what happened.
All of you are growing old.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'm sure they are even older than me, but that's just by the way. But so, I'm surprised, really. I mean, who will be doubting whether Nwosu is a hero in Nigeria today? Who is not? Except maybe 13-year-old, 12-year-old, you can say that. But people of their age, I'm really surprised. And that the thing is turning ethnic is also very disappointing. Because if you see almost everybody supporting is from the East, nobody from the East has gone against. Almost everybody that's against is not from the East.
No. But there are persons from other parts of Nigeria. Senator Ned Nwoko, Senator Adamu Aliero, Senator Yahaya Abdullahi, Senator Abamoro, they were part of the 15 that proposed that bill. So, and they even, one or two of them joined in the press conference.
Yeah. So I think, in conclusion, the man should be immortalized. The man, the hero, his attitude was far above the average Nigerian.
I was even arguing that even if, for anything, the fact that he was also a distinguished scholar of political science, social theory, instead of all these characters that they put on the national
it's just the Senate. At the appropriate time, the former president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, decided to recognize MKO. Even if he did it to spite IBB, like some said. The presidency can take this up, particularly when...
the presidency has.
This is what led to... Yes. I mean, it should be easy. If some are claiming to be defending democracy, then you must identify the milestones of true democracy in Nigeria, even if some terminated it, to establish that it's part of the transformation, departing from the crookedness to the path of righteousness. So, like I said earlier, there are still some issues of order and rules and things. It can still be revisited. And somehow, like eventually MKO now, we have, even IBB in his book has admitted that he won the election. So why not go the whole lot? And it's just quite interesting that the man is late now. And far away in the US, he's honored. I listened to the Attorney General of, I think, Maryland, honoring Humphrey Nwosu as a brilliant scholar and a forthright person. So I don't think it's over right now.
Opinion. If Parliament does not, because of this, their conflict and all that, of course, the presidency should. And the president has spoken along that line. When I think the delegation from the presidency went to the East, they spoke along that line. And I will encourage the presidency to just do as Barrister Ologun has said, like Buhari did for MKO. That would just be good. That would serve the cause of justice.
Some people argue that the Igbos are continually treated as if they are a defeated people in the Nigerian arrangement, as if the civil war never ended. Maybe that may be some kind of blinker, for people not listening to the conversation. But I will get to a point where there will really be unity in the real sense of it, and every man in this country will be valued on the basis of their ability, merit, and contributions, and not for ethnic or religious reasons. Some of the people who get onto the national honor list, I don't think they deserve it. So if we see people who are more distinguished and who have played a role, they should be honored. It should not be a question of where they come from. It should be about their ability. So it's good. You have asked President Tinubu to take another look at it from the executive arm of government. Now let's take one more topic, I think, before we wrap it up. Hundreds of worshippers gathered at the Grand Mosque in Mecca on the first day of Eid al-Fitr to perform prayers, marking the end of the holy Muslim month of Ramadan. The mosque, one of Islam's most sacred sites, was filled with the faithful from around the world as they celebrated the occasion with prayers of gratitude and reflection. Eid al-Fitr is a significant event in the Islamic calendar, and this year the atmosphere at the Grand Mosque was particularly vibrant as Muslims observed the end of a month of fasting, prayer, and self-discipline. The gathering in Mecca serves as a reminder of the unity and devotion of Muslims worldwide, coming together to celebrate after a month of spiritual renewal. Again, Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim viewers and listeners. Well, this time, let me start with you again, Prof. Today is Eid al-Fitr, and it's about self-discipline, it's about compassion, it's about lessons that have been learned over the 30-day period of fasting. Will Nigerians imbibe the lessons of the holy month? Even now that most Christians are also observing Lent. Because I have this pet argument about the disjunction, the disconnection between private morality and public morality. When it is Lent period, everybody is fasting. When it is Ramadan period, everybody is fasting. But do we see the evidence in how Nigeria is managed, in how even ordinary Nigerians behave?
Yeah, and that is the crux of the matter. Ability to match what one professes with one's actions and one's way of life. It's always been the challenge, for religious people. The ability to ensure that the things the belief you claim to profess, your way of life reflects the belief, and that is the crux of the matter. We just talked about self-discipline. Yeah, people tend to a reasonable extent, try to live by the tenets of the religion during that period of fasting, whether for Christians or for Muslims. We know this because, in fact, I have friends who have hotels, and they say during that month of Ramadan, patronage is always, they make very little money. People don't come. Yes, but soon after the Ramadan is over, business booms.
So all the bars will get patrons.
In fact, it even seems that the month of fasting, where there was that self-discipline, they now want to make up for what was lost during that month as soon as Ramadan ends. And that is where the problem lies. The inability to be consistent with that self-discipline, which they tend to profess during the month of fasting. It's also like that for Christians during Lent. They tend to keep away from evil things, bad things. But
name those bad things.
Like what? They know. People who steal, for instance, some stop stealing. Those who carry women who are not their wives and all that. Of course, things like that. So what to say is that society is better when people are ethical, when people are moral. And most religions, encourage morality. In fact, not just encourage, insist that, adherence must be moral, must be ethical. There is another philosopher, Ibn Khaldun. He has a book titled The Muqaddimah, where he analyzed the rise and fall of states. And he says that when states are just forming, I imagine, it's usually when people are committed to the state, people are nationalistic, people are ethical. But when the state now grows and becomes worthy, people will now be consumed by chop life. And that chop life, the state will start coming down. Essentially, the rise and fall of states.
Yeah.
Yes, and what we can glean from from his submission is that when people are ethical, people are moral, people are self-disciplined, not just for themselves and their families, the state tends to do well. And that is how I want to summarize the need for people to move beyond the Ramadan month or the Lent month in self-discipline and being ethical, being moral. I've always said that one of our problems in Nigeria is that we wallow in moral morass, and that we need to come out of that morass for us to do well. This celebration should give us a basis for that assessment, and of course, to turn a new leaf.
The same argument, you are quoting Ibn Khaldun. Emitai Ezioni also touches on that same argument in the moral imperative, which is his own contribution to the argument. But let's listen to Mr. Ologun.
Yes, I congratulate our Muslim brothers and sisters. And I've sent out some messages already, even to my uncle in the US, Alhaji Abdul Kadri. And the point I want to bring out is the point of reflection. And I will extend it. If you reflect on a particular action that refreshes you, that strengthens your spiritual life, why don't you hold to it? And look at the life of Joseph. If you study Joseph from Genesis 39 to Genesis 41, even beyond, he was a young man who, out of reflection and the fear of God, decided to be righteous, not just through the exercise of religion, but by committing himself to pleasing God. And instead of hating his brothers in return, he decided not to hate them. And what I say to people is that never get bitter, always get better. You saw how God worked with him. And whether we are talking about the Muslim celebration, even the Christians are fasting right now, you see, let it reflect in the society. When the followers of Jesus were seen in Antioch, the people observing them said, "This must be Christians following Jesus." And I believe if there are leaders we follow, let's reflect the principles and the doctrines that they have, manifested, that we have seen. And above all, the Bible says that righteousness exalts a nation. I want to see the impact of all this seeking God in any religion manifest in good governance in Nigeria, because what God says in Genesis chapter 1 verse 28 is that we should replenish the earth. So if that is what we have been doing in Nigeria, Nigeria should be the third richest country in the world, but it's never too late. We can carry that reflection forward and say, can we now choose to secure the future rather than mortgaging it? So once again, and I'm happy, in Ikeja today in Lagos, saw some young ones, gaily dressed, jumping around and enjoying themselves. And I think, I pray that righteous living will be sustained and not just be for the moment. So once again, congratulations and happy celebrations.
But in the spirit of the moment, Mr. Ologun, Professor Aworawo, do you know any Muslim who is having a small party this evening? I mean, we are all celebrating together, Christians and Muslims. Do you have
I'm sure you have had, you have scores of invitation already. Dr. Abati, I'm sure you have scores of invitation.
Because when Muslims are celebrating,
Which to choose.
Christians should celebrate with them. When it is the turn of Christians, all of us should just be together as one community
And like
of
someone
united
said,
people.
really, which is scriptural. Whether you talk of Muslim or Christianity, I mean, the same Father Abraham gave birth to Ishmael that became the foundation of Islam, and gave birth to Isaac, that also became the foundation of Christianity we have today. So, but maybe in this country, those who want to take disadvantage, I don't want to say advantage, push these religious sentiments to have their way. Like the matter we discussed on the case of Humphrey Nwosu. I believe in one nation. I have friends. I've been across Nigeria. I've been to Arochukwu everywhere. But when some politicians want to have their way, they create these divisions to confuse the people. So once again, happy celebrations to all Nigerians, and we wish our country the best and God's blessings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ologun. Thank you, Professor Aworawo. We are all one before God. Happy Eid al-Fitr. You've been watching This is Live, the Sunday talk show. here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.